Welcome back. This is video 4 of making schematics and PCBs with KiCad. With this video we'll talk about assigning footprints and show you how to do that. I'm going to break this video into two parts. This first part will go into detail about how to take an existing footprint and modify it to make it work for you. So here's our schematic that we left off with. I've done an electrical rules check on it. Everything seemed to check out. Now we need to specify the physical size and shape of each component so that the computer will know where to put those components and how they fit onto our final printed circuit board. To begin assigning footprints, I'm going to go up and click on the Assign PCB Footprints to Schematic Symbols icon on the top menu bar. That will take just a minute to load the footprint libraries and pull up all of my symbols that I need footprints for. I'm going to resize some of these windows to make it easier to read, and it highlights the first symbol, BT1, for my battery. As I pull up the battery library for my BT1 to select what footprint I want for my symbol. But as I look at these, I don't really want a battery holder. Instead, I just want a battery snap with two wires going in on two pads on the board. So what I really need to do is create a new symbol, or I could modify an existing symbol to get something I really want. I'm going to look down here, and you could try a bunch of different symbols. I know before I've looked at test points. I'll pull up this test point footprint and then click on the View Selected Footprint. Pulls up a window and shows me what it looks like. This is two pads. I can even click on the 3D view, use the mouse center scroll wheel to scroll in or out, click and hold, and I can drag it around. I can see it from 3 dimensions. That's really kind of what I want. But I want it to have a plus and a negative symbol and say what I want it to say. So I'm going to close out of that, X out of that. These may be two pads that are too close together for what I want. But if I take this symbol, I can modify it to create my own footprint for what I want. So I'll show you how to do that next. Cancel that and go up to our footprint editor option in the top menu bar. So if I click on that, it'll load the libraries. Just as with creating components, is very similar in creating footprint symbols. So the first thing I want to do is add a new library, or create a new library. We have to select where to save it, so I'm going to select the main KiCad folder, and I'm going to call it My Practice Library, and then save that. Let's make it a global library so I can use it for more than just this project. It'll load footprints. Now I need to select my footprint symbol. So if I search for test point, it'll come up with the test point library. Here's the one that I had before, test point. I double click on that. It's two pads with a pitch or a distance between the two pads of 5.08 millimeters. I can scroll in to zoom in or zoom out, resize the windows if I need to. Click and hold the center wheel to move. What you need to know when you're modifying these symbols is that everything is laid out in reference to a center point. These blue lines indicate your center point on the grid. And I can adjust my grid size here in this drop-down menu if I want. So if I double click on one of the pads, for example, pad number 1, I can select what type of pad I want it to be. It's a through-hole pad, a rounded rectangle. Say I want to change that to just a rectangle. It tells me what size the hole is, 1.3 millimeters. Gives me my position on the grid. This is X 0, Y is 0. Tells me the size of the pad in millimeters. So this looks good to me. I'm going to change it to be a rectangular pad. If the other pad is too close to that one and I want to expand that out, what I really want to do is expand the size of the outline first. So I can double click on this white line, and let's just say let's add 2 more millimeters to it. So if I have my starting X point is 6.88 millimeters, I could just make it 8.88 millimeters for that line, and the ending point also 8.88 millimeters. Now the Y values I can leave the same, and it'll just shift that white line over. For the top white line, I can make my ending point 8.88 millimeters. Notice the starting X point is negative 1.8. That's in reference to the center of that hole, which I've set to be 0, 0. And the bottom white line, again, I'll make the starting point 8.88. So now I've moved my outline. I can move the blue line the same way. Let's make the starting point and ending point 8.6 millimeters, and then move my endpoint to 8.6 millimeters there. Same for this bottom blue line, 8.6 millimeters there. Now I can move my circular copper pad to 7.08 millimeters. Again, we're just shifting everything over 2 millimeters. And the center line, as I click on that, I need to clarify, and we'll change that to 7.08 millimeters. That provides the center line between the two center holes. My text, if I just click and drag to highlight it, I can move it to where I want. I'm going to change the reference of this by right-clicking and saying Edit Footprint, or I can just do the hotkey E. My reference, instead of REF, I'll change that to Power, PWR. And my value, I'm going to change that to battery leads. And the only other thing I want to add onto this is a positive and a negative symbol. So if I go over here to my right-hand menus, I can click on the Add Text button, click on my footprint, put a plus symbol in, but I need to tell what position. So we'll say -3. That ought to be just about right. That's good. I'll go over and add some text on this side as well, a negative symbol, and we'll make that at position 10 and see if that works. If you get the wrong position, you can just change it. But those look good. I like the way that footprint looks now, so now I need to save it. So I'll go to File, Save As. Now I need to tell it what library to save it in. So I'll find My Practice Library, and this time I want to change the name of it to Battery Leads. The next thing I want to do is go to Assign PCB Footprints to Schematic Symbols. I click on that icon. Again, it's going to load my footprint libraries. Again, I can resize my windows. Now it has BT1. This time, let's go down to the My Practice Library and select My Practice Library Battery Leads. Double click on that and it assigns that to my battery. So now if I go back to my schematic, hover over my BT1 symbol and then click F, hotkey F for footprint, it tells me the library it's stored in and the name of the footprint. That's how you modify a footprint and save it as your own. You can also create a footprint from scratch. If you want to create it from scratch, you just go up to File, Create Footprint, and then you select your different symbols over here to create it from scratch. I've already assigned the footprint for symbol 1. In the Assign Footprints box, I can click on this Select Next Unlinked symbol, and it goes to symbol 2 for capacitor. That's a 0.01 microfarad capacitor. So now I need to find a symbol for that. I can scroll down in the footprint libraries until I find capacitors. Again, SMD is for surface mount devices. I'm going to be using through hole, so that's THT, capacitor THT, through hole technology. And now I can look through a bunch of these, lots of options, and notice a lot of them say axial or radial. What I need to know is, well, what kind of capacitor am I going to be using? So this is where learning about the different components is really helpful. Axial means one lead coming out from each end of the component, as shown here for this resistor. Radial is both leads coming out the same end for this capacitor. So I do want a radial termination for my leads, not axial. And this also is a disc capacitor. This particular capacitor is one like I used when I breadboarded my design. Here's my original breadboarded design to make sure the circuit works, and I used that same capacitor. So let's use that. It's called a disc capacitor. So I want to select a capacitor THT for through hole technology, disc capacitor. Now I need to know what size. Now as you look at these different numbers, the D stands for diameter, the W for width, the P for pitch. Pitch is the same as the distance between the leads, or the lead spacing. So a very useful tool to have when you're working with developing a schematic is a ruler. So you can just measure the space between the leads, measure your components. So a ruler both in inches and in centimeters helps. Looks like my leads here are about 5.5 millimeters apart. So I need to look for a capacitor that's about that, has a pitch of about 5, there's one, has also a diameter of about 5. Mine was a little larger diameter, so let's go with a diameter of 6 millimeters, a pitch of 5 millimeters. So if I select that one, if I want to know what it looks like, I can click on the View Selected Footprint, and it shows me what it will look like. It's just got 2 holes for the capacitor leads to fit through the board. I can even click on this 3D display, scroll the center mouse wheel, and then left click and hold, and that will show me what it looks like. That's the kind of capacitor I want. I'm going to close out of that, close out of this. So I want my 6 millimeter diameter, pitch of 5 millimeter capacitor through hole. So double click on that will assign that footprint to that symbol and take me to my next footprint to be assigned. For symbol 3, the speaker. Now for the speaker, really all I need is 2 leads, again going through the printed circuit board. That's similar to the battery, so why don't I create my own symbol for that, or modify the battery symbol to be for the speaker. Hit OK for now. So I'm going to click again on my footprint editor. It's going to load up the libraries, and this time I'm going to go back to my practice library and select the battery leads. Double click on that, it loads that symbol. I can modify this footprint to be the symbol for my speaker. So the first thing I'm going to do is hover over this, hotkey E, and I'm going to change my reference to SPKR for speaker. My value will be speaker leads. I'm going to change my footprint name also to speaker, and I'll change the description to speaker leads with 2 pads and giving the pitch. I need to change this so it says 7.08. I forgot to do that with the battery, so I should go back and resave that and correct that. Now there's my symbol. I can actually get rid of the plus and the minus if I wanted to. Just highlight that and delete that block. You can highlight that and delete that block as well. Right click and just delete the block, because I don't need positive and negative on my speaker leads. Now I'll go to Save As, select which what I want to name it, and it's saving in my practice library, and I will call that speaker. Click on Assign PCB Footprints again. We'll load up. I can select Next Unlinked Symbol, and it comes up to the speaker one, and now I need to select which library, so I'll go to My Practice Library again and double click on the speaker, and it assigns that and moves me to my next symbol that needs a footprint, number 4, a 3904 transistor. So I'm going to end this part 1 of video 4 here and pick up with part 2 of video 4, which will teach more specifically how to find the right footprints in the libraries to match components that exist, how to look up components, find information about them to know which footprint to assign. So join me for video 4, part 2 of making schematics and PCBs with KiCad. I hope you learned a lot in this one. We'll see you for the next one.